My name is Paul Drodos, and my job has been to bring people together this evening to make this happen. As a Goodhue County Commissioner, I sit on the Public Health Board, and as a concerned citizen, I sit on the Duff Endowment Board, two of the sponsors for this program this evening. 6 months ago, I got a wake-up call when I saw how many people were seeking treatment for drug addiction in Goodhue County. The back-and-forth battle between alcohol and methamphetamine for the top seeking treatment for drug addiction was joined, unfortunately, by heroin and opioids, which came in at 20 and 5% respectively. Of course, at that time, a lot of people were talking about opioid addiction and the crisis it was causing, but it really did not come home to me until I started talking about it with people whose lives had been affected. Suicide stories, disappearance stories, and mostly painful stories caused by needles and pills and smoke. I simply could not stop thinking about it, talking about it, and writing about this problem, and my concerns were enthusiastically shared by the City of Red Wing and the Republican Eagle, two of our other sponsors here this evening. The scope of this problem is enormous. Our responsibility to respond is equally great. We are here tonight to respond as our civic duty to do something in the wake of a disaster. This is not a natural disaster. This is a human disaster, and as first responders, we have to help. I mentioned earlier that I'm a public health official. The most important lesson I have learned is that there is no health without healing. No health without healing. Our bodies and minds are strong, and we can overcome amazing obstacles when we get the help we need. So, as you know, the program this morning revolves around an author and his book, 6 Years Lost. This is the first time I have met, Ben Schmidt this very evening, although I feel like I've known him through his words, his experiences that were shown in his book. When I was looking for a focus for needles and pins, I talked to Kay Kuhlman, who had seen Ben speak at a Kiwanis meeting, and I followed up and asked him to help with this program this evening, and he was very enthusiastic and agreed to come here this evening. For those who have not read the book, I can tell you probably should. And for those that have and are here tonight, I think you will be impressed with how amazing a person he is and how much good he's doing with this problem. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to welcome Ben Schmidt, the very local author of 6 Years Lost. Thank you.
Well, thank you everybody, first off, for coming, especially a lot of us. It's a holy day, of course, which, you know, it's, hold that thought. So yeah, I was saying thanks for coming, especially for a lot of us. It's a holy day today, which kind of coincides coincidentally with kind of the intention of where I'm trying to go with this. You might notice I'm a little nervous, and partially because it's the largest group I've spoken to, and also because the last time I was in the room with a few of these gentlemen, I was going to jail. It was a long time ago, though. But yeah, and it's amazing to see everybody come together, and with the intention of the book was to use it as a vehicle to help people that are in the same position I was at or something relatable. You know, I was kind of on a dead-end street without really any way to get out of it. I mean, you kind of have a couple options. You go to jail, you go to treatment, or you pass away from it, really, which is unfortunate. We see a lot of that. It's kind of an increasing issue, and I'm sure some of these gentlemen and Abby here will probably have some statistics on that, but I guess what we're really looking for is to bring all these resources together and find ways to help a little more. And can we turn this up a little bit? I'm not sure if they can hear in the back. And yeah, to have this panel sitting together from all these different venues to assist in this, and as well as have you all show up to take away from something and participate in the discussion is, like, it's just a beautiful thing to see. So, you know, I hope we can move forward with something that'll help out. I hope this helps anybody in the crowd that is looking for ways to help or looking for help themselves. And now I can dance. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, so I have 15 minutes here before the chief will probably tell me to freeze. So, and then we can kind of hear what everyone has to say and again, kind of move forward and find things to do. You know, the direction, I mean, the idea of what I want to do with this and what everyone's trying to do to focus on these problems is there. How it's going to unfold, I really don't know. That's really the million-dollar question. And if one person had that answer, we wouldn't have a room full of people here with a panel trying to figure out how to help. So, you know, my story, if you've read it, might be relatable to some here. Some might be just kind of a complete shocker, really, and that stuff exists, but it does, and it's a growing problem. So, you know, I have kind of a brain stall here, but again, yeah, thanks for coming, and I think we'll kind of go through maybe some of the presentation and the speech everyone here has, and then maybe open up some questions. Maybe people will bring forward some discussion on things we can do, or, you know, just some things to bring to light. So I think I'll introduce who's coming up next here, Paul?
I am.
Paul Jodos.
Thanks again. Yeah, the size of the crowd kind of threw me for a little loop here. I'm a little more relaxed now. But I did want to share a story. I was at a conference studying this issue a couple weeks ago, and the county attorney from Washington County made a statement which really impressed me. He said, 10 years ago, I couldn't get 10 people in a room to discuss this issue. And he said, today I could fill the Metrodome. So I think if you look around yourself tonight, you can see how many people that have been affected by this problem, or certainly have been giving it some thought and want to make some progress in this direction. So in order to do that, I had made a statement that we really didn't need any more talking heads, because there are so many programs and so many people and so many statistics that it actually becomes unreal once again, and that isn't the point here. The point here is to bring people into focus and to bring the problem into focus. So what we've done is we've compiled some experts on this subject, and I think the most telling thing about them, when I ask them about their biographies or to give me a little bit of information, they were very brief, because these people in these fields are really much more concerned about themselves. Excuse me, they're not concerned about themselves. They're concerned about others, which is a very important thing. So first of all, I want to thank them for their service and all they do, and they're here for a very good reason. So first of all, I'll go down the panel here, and we'll try and, even if they're not in order, but let's just talk about some of the people here. For example, Eric Spigensky is the treatment director of the Common Ground here in Red Wing. The Common Ground Treatment Facility includes 7 various clinics and get well operations. Eric has a master's in social work and has been a treatment professional for 10 years, serving hundreds of clients and in recovery himself, working with people in order to make differences in their lives. He also oversees 20 clinicians in this field, which is quite an amazing accomplishment. Also on the panel we have Dr. Tom Blee. Tom lives in Red Wing. He's a trauma surgeon in St. Paul. He has an organization called Life Team, and works with inner city gangs in the cities. Tom is also, he also works with the St. Paul Police, and he's a mentor with a slogan which I think is really significant. He rebuilds families by rebuilding fathers. So Tom, welcome. You can just tell I'm very organized. Anyway, that's not true. But I'd also like to welcome to the panel Paul Gilo. Paul Paul has been in 33 years of law enforcement in the Sheriff's Department of Goodhue County. He spent 6 years in investigations as a narcotics investigator, participated in the steering committee that was put together in an attempt to start a treatment court in Goodhue County. So that's a very admirable thing to do. Judge Bailey is here. Judge Bailey is a district court judge, chambered here in Red Wing. Prior to this, he was an assistant public defender for many years. He has also served as a Foreign Service officer with the U.S. Department of State and a Peace Corps volunteer. He earned a bachelor's degree from Carleton College, a master's from Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies, and has his Juris Doctorate from the University of Minnesota Law School. So thank you, Judge. I think one of the people that impressed me the most in this talent search, Abby Villan, has worked for Goodhue County Health and Human Services for 12 years and is a licensed marriage and family therapist since 2008. Her current position is social services supervisor of adult mental health, chemical health, and adult protection. She has a background in providing a variety of mental health and therapy to children, adolescents, and adults. Well, that makes up the panel, and I hope I haven't missed anybody. Oh, I'm sorry, Steve. Well, I told you I wasn't that organized. Anyways, Steve is the assistant attorney, county attorney for Goodhue County. I'm sure he's an attorney. And Steve, if you would, please, maybe you can include your bio when you're called upon. Now, fortunately for you, I'm turning the microphone over. Oh, what? No, we're just, yeah. My wife is helping me. That's how bad it is. And anyway, I did also want to welcome all the guests and the distinguished people here from all the various agencies. And I see Carol Duff just arrived, and the Duff Endowment has made this possible, so we certainly appreciate their support. But now, fortunately, I'm turning the microphone over to the moderator this evening. Chief Pohlman will give you a little bit of his own biography, but what I want to do is I want to tell people how impressed I am and how thankful I am that law enforcement in this community in Goodhue County and the city of Red Wing are extremely, I want to call them humanists, because law enforcement is a very difficult thing. But whenever I talk to the chief or whenever I talk to Paul Gilo, we talk about making people better, trying to find the right path, and certainly paying attention to human people in need and often in pain. So with that in mind, I would like to introduce the chief, who will be the moderator of the night. He works with this every single day. Their outcome is, their hope is always for a better outcome for all of the citizens. And that's really why we're all here today, is to join hands and to make that happen. So Chief Pohlman, I'm turning the microphone over, and good luck.
Thank you, Commissioner Droldis. Just a little bit about myself. I became your chief of police in 2012. I've got over 31 years in law enforcement. I began my career in active duty Air Force, and then I spent 16 years with the Grand Forks, North Dakota Police Department before I was hired by the department here, and I'm very proud and very happy to be here and serve the community of Red Wing. My education, I have a master's in business administration. But again, you're not here to talk to us as your moderator. We're going to get the panels brief, what they can do in this helping to serve our community in this problem and this concern. And to kick that off, so that we can get to the discussion and the questions and the interchange, which will be the most important thing tonight, is I just want to give you a little background of what my department sees. We've implemented community policing here. We feel it's very important. I believe strongly that police should be involved with improving the quality of life for their citizens. So we need to listen to all our citizens and serve all our citizens. One thing I constantly look at when I'm looking at the statistics and the numbers in our community is the pain and suffering. And those that are in pain, and what can we do as a department and as a community to ease that and make it better. I pulled the last 5 years of 3 categories here, and that's the first one is narcotics arrests. Second is suicides, calls for service, and attempted suicides. So first off, narcotics arrest. In 2013, the Red Wing Police Department arrested 240 people. 2014, 274. 2015, 220. Now this is for drug arrests. 2016, we arrested 469, doubled in 1 year. And in 2017, we arrested 532. I'm not really proud of that, but it points out a need in our community that there's people suffering and people turning to drugs to ease that suffering. Along that same lines, in suicides, 2013, Red Wing saw 4 suicides. 2014, we had 3. These are successful suicides, if there is such a thing. 2015, 2. 2016, 2. And 2017, 3. Now, we also keep track of calls for service for attempted suicides. 2013, we responded to 76 attempted suicides. 2014, 70. 2015, we had 96 attempted suicides. 2016, 73. And in 2017, we saw 98. So those are things that I want to have an input on, and I think everybody in this panel is here tonight to try to reverse some of those numbers. So Red Wing Police Department, what are we doing? Our proactive programs. Over a year ago, we've armed all our squad cars with naloxone so that we can treat opiate overdoses right on scene right away. We've also started a GREAT program. GREAT stands for Gang Resistance Education and Training, and we teach that in the 5th and 7th grade level. In fact, Officer Lindholm, who is here with me tonight watching the display boards, is one of my instructors. I have 3 instructors, and they teach life skills, how students can create goals and then make decision making to achieve those goals. And then we also teamed with the courts and a lot of the people up here to try to bring treatment court into our community, because we realized years ago when I first started, we thought we could arrest our way out of this problem. That is not the case. That's not going to happen. We need a 3-pronged approach of education, enforcement, and treatment. So I believe strongly that bringing treatment is important. And then also, the Red Wing Police Department wants to be a resource for people in our community to get you on the right path, to direct you to the right offices that can help. And a lot of these people work with those offices. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Paul Gielo, and he can talk to you about sheriffs.
Good evening, everybody. Just to try to keep this a little quicker for me to talk tonight and keep this moving, the Sheriff's Office works hand in hand with the Police Department. We believe in the same values that Chief Pohlman talked about. So I'm going to talk a little bit about enforcement and what we do for enforcement. I was on the Drug and Gang Task Force for just about 6 years. And in Minnesota and actually throughout the country, there's task force. We belong, along with Red Wing, in the Southeast Task Force. That includes all of Southeast Minnesota from Goodhue counties to the north to the south to the Iowa border and over through Mower County. There's 7 counties involved. 6 police departments have officers on this task force. And what that does, it's a great resource. There's a commander from the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office that runs the task force. And what it does is it allows, at times when we do controlled buys or when we do search warrants, we need extra people. And we don't always have them. So what we can do, if we're doing a warrant up here where we need 10 people, we can get guys from the task force, gals that are assigned to the task force, and they'll come up here and help us. And our guy that's assigned to the task force, there's one day he might be working up here, the next day he could be in Austin and helping them, and then over to Winona helping them. And it's a great organization of guys and gals that work hard in this. They mainly target the dealers. They don't go after the users as much. We're trying to arrest the dealers. There's times that we do, and I know that Mr. O'Keefe would agree with this, and Judge Bailey, if we have users with kids, then we do target them. We try to get them in the system. We try to get the kids in a safe place. But normally the task force is going more after the dealers. As far as that goes, I want to keep this quick and just talk about just that enforcement. So that's, you know, and then we have our patrol guys too that make a lot of arrests. But the other thing I wanted to touch quick on, I remembered, is, you know, we talk about the opioid crisis, and heroin is obviously the buzzword, but in Goodhue County, and I would say in southeast Minnesota, methamphetamine use is by far, you know, the #1 drug we see. I would say our arrest cases are, I don't know, 20 to 1, probably higher. Mr. O'Keefe would know, but they are. I just saw Olmsted County, their methamphetamine use is at an all-time high. They had some study that just came out earlier this week. So we just need to keep in mind too that I know the buzzword, you know, these days is the opioid crisis, but, you know, methamphetamine use still is the #1, you know, abused drug that we see for the enforcement.
Thank you, Paul. And now to kind of accelerate, we'll just pass it down the line, and next is Ms. Villerin.
Thank you. So as Paul had mentioned earlier, I work for Goodhue County Health and Human Services, and I supervise our adult services and social services, and that includes our chemical health and substance use, along with adult mental health services, which are very related. As we know, mental health and chemical health have a lot in common, and more data is coming out about the cross references between the two. So at the county, we provide what is called a Rule 25 assessment, and that is a chemical use assessment that determines a level of care. So someone can come in, we can't refuse anyone. Anyone can come in and request a Rule 25 assessment, and we have 2 people that are our Rule 25 assessors, and we do have some contracted agencies, including Common Ground, which Eric is with, that provide these assessments. That determines someone's level of care, if they need outpatient, if they need inpatient, and other recommendations. And then if someone is eligible, income eligible, they are eligible for it's called the consolidated fund, which is a big fancy word for, we do fund stuff for people to go to treatment, whether that's outpatient treatment or inpatient treatment. We have seen a huge increase in our Rule 25 assessments throughout the last 5 years, along with an increase in inpatient and outpatient treatment admissions. We get every year, there's a report that comes to the county, and it's usually a little bit back, so I only have 2016 and prior data, and that gives us data from treatment admissions throughout Goodhue County, and those are not just treatment admissions that are county paid. Per se, those are treatment admissions that may be someone self-paying, private insurance, any treatment admission. And so it has been interesting to look at the increase in just treatment admissions overall in Goodhue County. So in 2016, 388 people were admitted to a treatment facility. That doesn't mean that they successfully completed that treatment, but it does mean that they participated in some kind of chemical dependency treatment. In 2015, it was 310. 2014, it was 233. In 2000, the year prior was 316. So we're seeing 388 is getting close to 400, and I would suspect that 2017's data is going to come out to be even higher than that. It's always really useful because sometimes at the county we feel like we are getting more and more referrals or more people going to treatment, and it's really helpful to have that data to back that up. The other thing that is really interesting with this report that we get is it lists the drug of choice, the most problematic drug that someone is going into treatment for. So in the last 5 years, I have seen meth and alcohol fluctuate as 1 and 2, very interchangeably, very close. So I would say between 30 and 25% meth and alcohol. And then heroin has not really come up until 2016. So I'll just read through the data for the drug of choice from 2016. So alcohol was at 31%, and that was a bit lower than the state average. Methamphetamine was 30% that was about 5% higher than the state average. And heroin was actually at 20%, and the state average was 12%. So you can see that that's an 8% increase over a state average. And they actually measure other opiates, so like prescription pills, in a different category. And in 2016, that was at 12%. So you can see that heroin is here. We are not at the county level. We're not seeing the impacts necessarily of heroin use or opiates use. I would agree with Paul Gilo that we are seeing much more effects of methamphetamine use. At Health and Human Services, where we see that is we see it in adult mental health cases, we see that in civil commitments, and we see that in child protection out-of-home placements that are related to a parent's meth use. And our out-of-home placements are increasing very rapidly. And I would say that the percentage of them that have some kind of methamphetamine aspect is increasing. The other point that I think is important is that we're seeing families that are really complicated. So while someone may come in with methamphetamine use as a primary, we're seeing really complicated mental health stuff. We're also seeing a lot of people struggling with basic needs. How do I meet my basic housing? How am I going to get food? And then you throw in parenting and just other life challenges, and we're seeing really complicated people with a lot of challenges, and that makes it really tough for our social workers to help them. And our perspective is always to keep families together and to get people the supports they need so that they can continue on and hopefully continue on without our intervention. I think that's all.
Good, thanks. So my name is Tom Blee. I live in Red Wing. I was a general surgeon here for 12 years and switched my career and went up to inner city trauma 4 years ago. Saw something that completely blew my mind. As a level 1 trauma system, we take care of the sickest of the sick. So our team is activated about 800 to 900 times a year, 2 to 3 times a day. And we register about 4,000 additional trauma cases a year. 10 to 15% of that is penetrating violent trauma. 75% is polysubstance abuse related. 3 out of 4 patients in my hospital, alcohol is not even on the screen anymore. It's methamphetamine, it's heroin, it's drugs we don't even know the name of. Roger mentioned the naloxone carried in the rigs. We discharge people with boxes, a shoebox full of naloxone. The quality of the drugs is getting so much better. That's a tough way to put it, but our medicines don't even combat that. I didn't like what I was seeing 4 years ago with kids. I immersed myself in the worlds of inner city gangs. I began a coalition called Life Team, which is now my own nonprofit organization. So I work with the St. Paul Gang Unit, and I work with Wraparound Services, and we have a coalition that meets every other month in my hospital, and we tackle men especially and bring them out of the world of gangs. But what I noticed when I was doing this work was there were kids hanging around in the neighborhoods that shouldn't be there. So I followed the trail out of the inner city and got into the suburban rings of kids with drugs. I could follow it right into Red Wing with heroin, methamphetamine. I know where my gangs are pumping it into the city. I know when it switched. I know when it came out of Rochester. That's all the stuff we're seeing. So the purpose of Life Teams, Leadership Impacting the Family Environment, is we jump on people that want help, especially men. Some of our representatives are here. The work that we do now specific to Red Wing includes direct mentoring. We're in the jails doing direct interventions. We have a curriculum that will be starting hopefully within a month in the Goodhue County Jail to help men get out of this. We rebuild families by rebuilding men. And I'll tell you something, the suicides that we're talking about here are real. I've had 3 surgical suicides this week. I was almost late today because my 8:15 yesterday gunshot wound I've taken back to the operating room 3 times. Young kids involved in all this. And out of all the violence I see, I do 5 times as much surgery for heroin-related, methamphetamine-related issues because the drugs are mixed with meat tenderizers, or we don't even know what pollutants. I amputate arms. I drain abscesses. We are busier doing surgery for these drugs than we are for the inner city gang violence.
My name is Stephen O'Keefe, and I am an assistant Goodhue County attorney, and I've been with our office for a little over 25 years. I'm starting my 26th year right now. And part of my primary responsibilities, which have been this for about the last 15 plus years, is prosecuting felony adult drug crimes as well as child protection work. And that's where we see a lot of this stuff. So I wanted to start with a little bit about some of our statistics, which is the same as, it kind of coincides with what some of the other folks have been talking about, but it does highlight the importance of what we're dealing with locally here in our community. And of course, the county prosecutes countywide, so this is not just Red Wing, this includes countywide, but obviously a significant amount of those cases, because our population is centered here in Red Wing, a lot of this comes from Red Wing. We've seen that dramatic increase, and again, in methamphetamine, well, maybe I should start with the 2017. Our total number of drug-related crimes that we charged out were 313. Back in 2013, that number was only 91. So we've seen that dramatic increase that Paul and Chief Pohlman were talking about in the prosecution side as well. And the majority of that increase really has occurred over the last 2 or 3 years, where the numbers have just keep jumping and jumping and jumping. And in 2016, we had 308, so 2017, 313. And we can tell from what we've seen coming in this year so far that those numbers are probably going to be pretty consistent with in the past for 2018. As Chief Pohlman talked a little bit about the three-pronged approach to addressing this issue, obviously the courts and the county attorney's office, we're in that middle realm, we're at the enforcement part of it. We do work closely with law enforcement in dealing with these crimes, and they come into our office. And I think the prosecution of drug-type cases really provides a lot of structure for folks who are coming into the system. It opens doors to resources that they may not otherwise have had access to had they not come into the system. And that's kind of one of our goals in the prosecution side, is to really provide the resources and give these folks the structure so that hopefully they can address their addiction and become law-abiding citizens. I know that Judge Bailey, when he was a public defender, he and I worked quite a bit together, and I think he would probably agree that over the years we seem to see a lot more people coming back, repeat offenders, and we see a lot more people violating their probation for various reasons, and one of the major ones is use. Again, so they're on probation and they're still using, or they're failing in treatment and not pursuing that. So hopefully the prosecution end of it hopefully gives them some motivation to pursue that, and again also that structure. But it's also taught us, and that's why I think Judge Bailey would probably agree, is that the system really needs to be persistent and patient, because these addictions are hard to address for the individual and those working with them. And so I think over time we have come to the conclusion that we really need to be patient with these folks and keep providing that motivation and that pressure, and hopefully eventually they will get through treatment and hopefully it will stick. And that's the ultimate goal. When we have cases like cases like Ben's, where someone who has come through the system and has that success, there's nothing more satisfying to us in the system to have that happen, because it doesn't happen a lot. And when we get that result, it's just nice to have that type of outcome. And that is our goal. One of the issues that we've had in the past, and which is getting better now, is the resource issue that Abby was talking about. The county has had limited resources over the years, but that is starting to change. And I'm hoping that through this type of conversation, we need the help of the community to address these issues. It can't be just the professionals in the system, because it's just not enough. It's overwhelming. The volume is great. We need help. And like the programs that Dr. Blee was talking about, and I'm hoping that this conversation will spur some ideas about how the community can come together and help support these individuals who are going through this. Thank you.
Okay, well, good evening. My name is Doug Bailey. I'm one of the judges here in Red Wing. I want to thank Paul and all the panel members up here, but particularly you, for being here tonight. It tells me that we have a chance of success as we address this problem. I have 3 points to make to you. The first one, you know. This problem is devastating our community. Individuals, family members, and in general, all of us. You know that firsthand because your family members are suffering from these problems. Your neighbors are suffering from this problem. I want to tell you that from my perspective, as a former public defender, I was always amazed at the percentage of my clients who were having who had a drug problem, or the percentage of cases that I had that were related to drugs. There were the obvious ones, drug possession, drug sales, but there were the other ones too, burglaries, thefts. What do you think people are burglarizing your homes for? To get that chainsaw, to sell that chainsaw, get the money and use. What do you think the domestic assaults, what do you think they're arguing about before they're arrested for domestic assaults? It's drugs and alcohol. It's substance abuse. The other part of that devastation that this problem is causing us is the cost. If you are a concerned taxpayer, this problem is killing you. The cost to us up here in the government who is addressing these problems, to the social service agencies, public and private, huge. My second point, it has to be a community, multi-pronged effort to combat this, to address this problem. And I use my words carefully. I say address. This isn't a war that we're going to win. We're not going to be back here no matter what happens in 5 years drinking champagne and having a party because we in Red Wing, we in Goodhue County beat the problem. That we won or don't have a drug problem here anymore. We have to make a multi-pronged effort to address it. Now, my main point. All of us up here are some of those prongs to address the problem. From my perspective, as a judge, what we're trying to do is get a treatment court, a specialty court, up and running. The vast majority of counties in Minnesota have a treatment court or a specialty court of some kind. I'm embarrassed. We all should be embarrassed. We don't have one here. We should have one here. We're not going to win, not going to beat the problem if we get one, but it's going to help us. What is a treatment court? It's a program. Before I tell you what it is, I should tell you what's in place now. As Ben will tell you, when you have a drug problem, eventually you're in the courthouse. Eventually you plead guilty. Eventually you're placed on probation. You think sitting out there that when you're on probation, well, that's all you need. They don't have the staffing. They don't have the funding. They don't have the resources as much as you think they do. I place you on probation. I sentence you. And you go down to the probation office. And they say, get a chemical dependency evaluation. We'll see you in 3 months. Go back in 3 months. Have you had an evaluation? No, I didn't get to that. Okay, try to have that evaluation. Try to get you in treatment. We'll see you in a couple more months. All of us who are at the top of the heap of our society can't operate our lives that way. We don't get things done. If you tell me to do something in 3 months, I don't know if I'm going to get it done. We need, you all need more supervision. That's what drug court is. Drug court is a program where you come before me on a weekly basis. You get a lot more help. A lot more help to get into treatment. A lot more help with your general life, hopefully with community support, finding a house, a safe place to stay, finding a job. On one hand, you get all this extra help much more frequently. On the other hand, much more accountability. I told you what probation is. There's no accountability there. I'll see you in 3 months. Drug court, you're getting tested 2, 3, 4 times a week on a random basis. Law enforcement is stopping by your house, checking out to see who you're hanging out with if you're using. Much more accountability, and I, as in charge of the drug court, have a big stick. Because when you come before me the next week and you say you're using, I have the authority to do what? Send you to jail. That's the big stick. No one wants to go to jail. It's the penalty. It's not a cure, not going to cause the problem, but it's going to hold you accountable and hopefully get you on a better track.
That's going to be tough to follow. Eric Spagensky, substance abuse treatment provider, treatment director. I oversee 6 licenses. So we provide substance abuse treatment in Winona County Detention Center, Olmsted County Detention Center. I mailed in the application today for licensing for Goodhue County Detention Center. Outpatient treatment here, outpatient in Winona, outpatient in Rochester. Some of the topics I wanted to cover, and I wanted to be clear, being a treatment provider, I'm also a person in long-term recovery. And Common Ground, or myself, I would say myself, being the treatment director, I can decide to show up to these things or not. I wouldn't partner with a prosecutor in my previous life. I wouldn't partner with a judge or the sheriff's department or the police department. But I've worked with everybody on this panel here tonight for multiple years, and it's very clear the motivation and intention of what they want to do for people that are suffering and family members of those people that are suffering. And it is to restore their lives, to provide opportunities for individuals to make it into recovery. So as a treatment provider and as a person in long-term recovery, it's important that I oversee programs that use evidence-based treatment interventions. And one of those may lose is treatment court. Well, I guess I'm going to follow up the judge here a little bit. As community members, as county residents, I implore you to reach out to the county board, to reach out to those people who can make the determination to allocate funds to go to treatment court. It takes a little bit of money to run a treatment court, right? But the expenditure, the return on investment is paramount, second to none. I didn't bring any statistics here for that tonight. All anybody in the community has to do is reach out to me at Common Ground. I can get the numbers if you're more interested in specifics on what the return on investment is for the community. And like Abby said, like many others said on the panel here, it's important that for individuals suffering from substance abuse, they get wraparound services. They get treatment providers. They get judges that care, that don't want to put people in jail, that want to help them get on the right path. They get human service social workers that are trying to line them up with housing and resources and support so they can be successful in their endeavors. And lastly, I'll do it one more time. Please do some more reading and looking into what treatment courts are all about and what it provides for your tax dollar. As a counselor and a social worker myself, my tax dollars are important where I put them because our incomes they pale in comparison to others. But the reason why we do the work we do is to break the pains of addiction and what it causes families like myself. And when I saw this chart, on here, it hit home. You know, I've dedicated my life to substance abuse. The last 10 years in recovery to the profession of substance abuse. Prior to that, though, since 8 years old, it was abusing substances. And I look at this attempted suicides, the 98. Those are the ones we know about in this county. And being someone who has thought of suicide or attempted suicide myself, that is a very dark place to be. And that's only 98. I know the number's more than that. They just haven't been called in. They've thought about it. They've tried. They've been unsuccessful. They still haven't reached out for help. Stay active. As community members, stay active, stay vocal, and demand the change you want in your community, more importantly, for your loved ones, for your neighbors' loved ones, because lives can change dramatically for the positive. And I brought this here tonight. It makes me so proud. It's my 4-year-old's drawing, right? It's just amazing. I can hardly make it out, but it's the most beautiful thing. And I wouldn't have that opportunity had I been in South Florida when I tried to go to treatment and there was no funding for it. I had that opportunity because of Minnesota. I had that opportunity because at that time probation made sure you follow through with your obligations or commitments to get better. I believe we're on the right side of history. We're going to stay active, and we will provide services for people because it's the right and human thing to do. And that's all I have.
All right, now we're going to get to the important stuff and give Ben another chance to speak before we open it up to questions. And thank you, Ben.
Thank you. Yeah, I was sitting here getting a little more red-faced and nervous, listening to everything they all do, and I'm wondering, why am I here? What am I doing here? You know, I'm just sitting here. I have this book. You know, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum, the people are trying to fix. I don't know why I'm able to sit at the table with them, but I'm glad I'm able to. The idea of approaching rehabilitation in the community versus just like they've said, you get stuck in a system where the resources aren't there. I've said it before if you've heard my presentations. Hurt people, but I'm going to add to that now, not as much as they hurt themselves. Nobody grows up and is like, I can't wait to be a drug addict or abuse a substance or, you know, be breaking into houses so I can get my fix or whatever the case may be. It's typically not the case. And so as we kind of grow older and become stuck in this cycle, I can't speak for everybody. I would bet 99% of the people out there using and committing crimes don't want to be doing that. But there's no way, they have no way to get out of it. They're not going home and feeling good about themselves. And so now when this was brought up that they're looking to add resources on how to kind of help people get away from that, it's beautiful. It's going to help a lot of people. So with the community assisting on that and supporting that, I think, as he said, you'll see kind of a turning point in history as far as, I think it's safe to say that we can throw law enforcement at it, and the numbers they're going to keep going up. I mean, if you don't approach it with yeah, you got to hold people accountable, you know, to the crimes they're committing. But if we're just putting them into a cell when they get out and they have no resources to get better, they're just going to it's just going to repeat. So all you're doing is opening a door, close it, open and close. So you know, if I had one thing to ask of everyone tonight is to support and really push for this new investment into the community. I mean, we can shut the people behind the door and pretend it's not there. It's still there. You know, once you have to open that door again, it's right back, if not worse. So, you know, I'm not sure if anyone else has anything they want to say before we kind of go on, but I definitely wanted to say that on my piece to end. That's my intention here tonight.
Okay, now we're going to get ready to open up for questions. Commissioner Drolis will bring around the microphone if you have a question or any comments for any of the members up here, or especially, for Ben, our keynote speaker tonight. I mean, what he saw, went through, if you read his book, you know that it can be a dark place, and he walked through it. So we can learn from his experiences is a great thing. Also want to point out two other things, and that is, as far as our opioid and our prescription drug addiction, you can help by getting rid of your expired or excess drugs. At the law enforcement center, we have a drop box where we'll dispose of it properly, get it out of the cycle, get it out of the system, because as one thing we see is that our addicts will go to a friend's house, use the restroom, check out the medicine cabinet, take what they can for prescription drugs to keep filling that habit. So if you want to get rid of extra drugs, no longer needed, there's a drop box at the law enforcement center just inside main door, access 24 hours a day to get rid of those. So also, if you're a teacher, they did apply for continuing education credit, and I believe Miss Ann Jacobson has the forms if you need one of those for your continuing education credit as a teacher. So with that, feel free to ask any and all questions, because we definitely want to learn from our experiences, and we need your input, as has been stated.
Chief, can I ask a question first?
Absolutely.
Can I ask the audience how many people have read the book? And how many people, of those people, pass that book on to somebody else? So I think that says a lot for the people's engagement, and we want to thank you for that, because that was the intention. This is pretty much an invisible problem, because as Ben would say, most of the windows are blacked out. Most of the things are done in the dark or in secret, and therefore there isn't much chance really to bring it into the light and deal with it. So by showing our, I guess, our resolve here tonight to come together and actually address this in the open, it's very, very important, and I'm very thankful that people can get together and do this sort of thing. But I also know that people must have a question, and let me pass the mic.
It's not a question, but I did want to let everyone know I am in Pierce County Drug Court currently. I've been in it about a year. It is an awesome program. I graduate in about 2 months. I lost... As of yesterday, I actually signed the papers to get sole custody of my youngest son, which is huge. None of this would be possible without drug court. I'm just telling you guys. So, it does help. I've been down that road, and I got about 2 years sober now, and my life has changed because of God and drug court. That's all I got.
So what are the next steps then to getting this to become a reality in Red Wing? Or Goodhue County? I guess it's Goodhue County. But obviously, the wheels turn slowly, it seems to me, and if it's a need, we need to make a plan.
Well, I think it's twofold. It's organizational and it's money. We have a lot of professional support in the community from all the necessary parties to have a drug court. But we need a little bit more help coming together, finalizing things, and getting the nuts and bolts set up. Second, money. Treatment courts cost money. I wish that I could say, hey, I'm from the judicial branch. We bring our own money. It's just not true. It's just not there. There's a little judicial branch money for treatment courts. It generally goes to treatment courts that are already running, and it's just a little. And so they're not promising it to us. They're not suggesting really that we apply for it because we don't have one already. So it puts us in an awkward position money-wise. Here, I'm from the judicial branch. We have to have money, but I don't have any my own means to it. When I came on the bench a couple years ago, we got everybody involved in support of it, and I thought that we didn't have a great chance of getting funding from the county. So we didn't ask the county. Maybe that was a mistake. But what we did do is we applied for a federal grant. Several Minnesota counties had gotten this grant for quite a bit of money, several $100,000, in the previous year, and we thought we had a chance. We sent in we quickly got this grant application ready, and we sent it in, and we didn't get it. And so it is really tough in this day and age to run a program without money. You might ask me, well, what's the money for? All of us up here are already getting paid by the government. These things still cost money. To run a good treatment court, there's money for two things. One, generally speaking, you need a coordinator. You need somebody to oversee the day-to-day operation of it. Second, you need to do the testing. I said that treatment courts are twofold. There's the big helping hand, and there's the accountability. Accountability costs money because it's testing kits. You got to pee in a cup. These things, or do something. Take some sort of sample, right? These things have to be tested. Those testing kits cost money. So one of the things before us as a group and before us as a community is how to fund this. You want to say something?
Yeah. I mean, with regard to that, we have come a long way. We've done a lot already towards that ideal of having a full-scale drug court. Many of the people here tonight have been through the training from the National Drug Court Association on the best standards and best practices. So we have been trained to do the program, and we have a lot of the materials that help guide us through that process. So that's a positive. And I think everybody, all the essential elements and the key personnel and people who need to be involved in the treatment court have committed. So social services, law enforcement, treatment, county attorney's office, the judge, the major categories of people who need to be involved have all agreed to participate. And I know that the presentations that have been made to the county board, and Paul might want to add maybe if he wants to, but my understanding is that the county board has been supportive of the concept of a drug court. At the beginning, we were applying for drug court money through grants, and we will continue to do that to get that full-fledged drug court going. In the meantime, the people who are here and those that have already committed are still committed to doing it, and we've actually been talking about doing a smaller scale program to get started, and that's what we're working on right now.
Thank you, Steve. One thing I would like to add to that too, because when I've briefed the city council on our progress on the drug court, there's a couple other things, and that is a couple key elements is, of course, they need housing, reliable housing, and jobs, a job to help them get on their feet again. So I know the city of Red Wing is in discussion right now to see if they can't be one of the employers to help those people get on their feet again, because they're held accountable and tested so often that you don't see the same problems as you would with other people suffering from addiction as far as showing up for work, things like that. They're in a program that's got to be held accountable. So, you know, that's one thing we're doing. So keep it in the back of your mind as we start moving forward, those things. We do have to have housing and jobs for the participants also. So with that question, yes, sir.
Could you profile people who sell drugs? Do they live in Red Wing? Are they prone to committing violent acts? Are they, do they have drug problems themselves?
Who wants to tackle that one? Ben?
This might be the only thing I know anything about in this conversation. I sold drugs. I carried a gun. Violence, I a violent person. It's just name of the game or nature of the game. I think a lot of times we see on TV what we image drugs, drug dealers, and everything. One of the key points I wrote down that I was supposed to address, but I lost it, is we need to remove the labels and the imagery of what we imagine, what we see. I mean, you might look at somebody and say, that person looks like they're a drug dealer. They might not be a drug dealer at all. They could be a straight A college student. On the other hand, you could see someone dressed in a button-up shirt and jeans, and they're a drug dealer. Yeah, there's probably a lot of stereotypes that fit where, like, when I was, I'd be wearing my hat sideways and stuff, but that doesn't mean you should look at that when you're profiling a drug dealer. I know law enforcement probably picks out key things that actually helps, but it's probably not just the look. And I don't mean to speak for them, but they'll take an imagery, but they also take the actions that, is there traffic moving in and out of the house? I mean, there's other things I'm sure they key in that really help them pick it out. But as far as that, yeah, I guess we should be really careful with how we label and stereotype what we're chasing after. And maybe you have anything else you want to say on that?
I think you nailed it on the head. Ever since I became a chief, I've always stressed to my officers that we address actions and behaviors, not individuals or appearances. So when you're talking about those things, you look for patterns of what people are doing, the quick visits and things like that in the neighborhoods. But more importantly, though, just like you being here tonight, we count on you calling us. When you're seeing somebody come out their front door and do a quick handshake to somebody and they get in the car and leave, you probably just witnessed a drug deal. And we'd appreciate if you give us license plates and tell us when and where it occurred. So there's a lot of things like that, but it's the actions and the activities that I would watch for. And most of you, if it feels suspicious, just doesn't feel right, that's your internal sense telling you that you probably just witnessed something that's out of the norm. So very good question, thank you. But there is no, how do you say, template answer on those things. It varies by community also. So.
I just wanted to say, I mean, this is the biggest crowd I've ever seen in this room. But I would suggest you call your city council member and ask them in the 2019 budget to find the money to help get this drug court going. Frankly, I think it's really basic stuff, and the housing and all of those services that go with it are not normally the responsibility of a city council. But I guess I suggest in this instance that you do a little lobbying.
As a county commissioner, I would just like to respond a little bit to the drug court question. First of all, there are so few things that are positive in this whole problem. So the drug court stands out because of all of the possibilities that it presents not only to the community, but to people in need, and also the concept of recovery. So when we focus on the positive things, there's a couple things. Some counties actually tracked down all of the prescription drugs that they could find that were actually prescribed, and found out how many people were actually using those prescriptions, how many people were selling those prescriptions, and how many people were addicted to those prescriptions. And they just didn't make people go cold turkey. They gave them options. They could either stop, they could stop selling for certain, or they could get treatment. So some of those programs, a lot of the information is hidden from people because of HIPAA rules, which are just your medical records, and it's important that those things are protected. But it also doesn't give the community or the people at this table access to how many, how big the problem is. So we have to keep these things in mind. A lot of these statistics are even hidden from the people that could actually make a difference. So going forward, that's one of the things we have to consider, is what are the things that will make a difference, and why are they so, few and far between? But this certainly, everyone agrees that drug court is one of those things. And your county commissioners it would be helpful to to share your thoughts about that, because I'm a firm believer in it, and I think the passion of Judge Bailey just proves that when you see something that can make a difference, you have to really adapt it, and you really have to go for it. And there's also certain communities that are very prone to this problem and to the outcomes of this problem, which are really tragic. So we want to bring everybody up, and this is one advantage of drug court, that people can actually see that they have responsibilities and they have to come into the light and they have to live their lives like everybody else, and people can help them get out. So, sorry to go on. Yeah, that's what we need.
The one thing I've not heard, what's the base amount of money you need? I don't know what to ask for. What kind of money are we talking about?
I think we for the grant, we apply.
Judge, we need it for the recording.
For the grant that we applied for from the feds, I think we asked for roughly $100,000 a year for 3 years. That was the scope of it, in general.
Any other questions back there, Paul?
Yep, I got it.
I can get this.
We need some more microphones.
See, I got a question about the name, Pills and Needles. As a former addict, I disagree with that name completely. Just saying needles to some people is a trigger. And to me, that's just the wrong name.
Thank you, sir.
I'm really nervous now, sorry. As a recovering addict myself from Red Wing, I got 4 years clean off of IV meth use, but I had to leave to do it. Like, I couldn't get clean in this town because when I came back 2 years later, I'm still struggling. I have 4 years clean off of that, struggling with other addictions, but there's no housing that's affordable for an addict with a felony because of my addiction. There's no aftercare programs. You go to treatment, you're out the door, you're gone. Like, we don't have NA in this town. We have AA, but most people with narcotic and opiate addiction don't want to go to AA because it's very closed. It's very a different realm completely. So I think as a community who want to help, you need to focus on that also, because like how many of your grafts, your what is recovered or not recovered, but repeat offenders? How many people did get the Rule 25 3-4 times to go back to treatment because they came back and they couldn't stay sober because their lifestyle, their home, there's nothing for them. They couldn't get a job, they couldn't get a house, so they do what they do best. They go back out selling drugs and making money to survive. So I think maybe that's something you guys could think about also, is the aftercare, NA, and things like that to help people who are here with housing, because I'm still struggling to find a house for me and my kid, but I'm sober, you know? But people frown upon that because I have a felony and I can't get into apartments. I just got denied for 3 apartments because of my felony. So that's also something that could be addressed.
Thank you. I've seen personally the drug court in Wabasha County. A lot of people, something right here, it's a speaker. A lot of people have done a lot of good in that, and there's a lot to be said about drug court, and I think we do need one, there's no doubt. But I think we're missing something, and I think she brought it up. There's a personal effect. This man here arrested me 15 years ago. This man prosecuted me 15 years ago. One of his co-workers put me in jail. I was on my way to prison, but Jesus Christ set me free. And without somebody coming alongside of me, I would have walked away from that too. So we as people in this community need to offer ourselves. It's not just them in the drug court, it's us. Where do you fit in? Who do you know? What can you do to help somebody? Come alongside of them, give them a place to live, offer them a job, as we were talking before. Maybe form a group. We need to get together and go to the jails. We need to meet with people and personally encounter them and give them that love that's obviously missing, because that's why they're searching somewhere else.
I totally agree with you. Thank you for that comment. I was going to ask or kind of switch gears a little bit because we've talked about what to do when the problem is already there. But I'd really like, as a parent and a school board member, to talk about a little bit of the prevention piece. What I think you hit on it really well when you talked about we need a community supporting one another, and I think Red Wing does that in pockets. But what else can we do as teachers, as parents, as neighbors? What else can we do? Speaking as people who've witnessed others looking for that piece to cover the hurt, but reaching out isn't going to do it all. How do we break that cycle? How do we get in? How do we stop that? But how do we prevent it from starting in the first place?
A lot of questions there. I'll try to remember some of them. It's a big crowd, like Ben said. Well, the biggest component to reducing substance abuse or substance dependence is early education. So family members talk about drugs and alcohol and the devastating effects it has. I think of the lady who's sober, who's looking for a place to live, single parent, single parent. And I think of all the work she has to put in just to make ends meet and try to find a place. And that kid needs a mom that can spend more time with that kid to talk about drugs and alcohol. Because education is the biggest intervention to stopping this disease. They talked a lot about, some numbers. Well, there's 23 million people in recovery in the country, 23 million. There's also 23 million people in need of treatment services. And they say 1 in 10 will actually get the services they need. Another statistic is good, I think, to have as educators, to have as community members, family members. It's a chronic illness, right? So it's like heart disease, diabetes. They have virtually the same relapse rate as addiction does. Substance abuse has virtually the same relapse rate as diabetes and heart disease and cancer, virtually the same. So they're looking at around 5 significant relapses before the disease is fully arrested or terminal, one of the two. So it also takes patience with family members, community members, to understand the chronicity, the chronic nature of the illness itself. I hope that answered one of your questions. It's just about education. I was a child, a latchkey kid, in the Just Say No campaign. Oh my gosh, what a joke. Because I grew up, right, with a single mom who tried to take care of me her best she could, tried to provide for me the best she could, but I was a latchkey kid. I moved to 9 different elementary schools by the 3rd grade. I don't think I felt like I belonged anywhere, right? Just say no. How do you just say no? And then your brothers or your sisters or your parents are using substances, and that's what you know at 8, 9 years old. Just say no. It's a concept that doesn't make sense, where you say just say no. It's about education and then support. And I do like that Abby also discussed that social services works very hard to keep the family unit together, because there's tons of data. You take kids away from the family, the kids end up doing worse in their life than staying with the family, even though the mother or father of the family unit is struggling to get their lives back on track. So education, I guess, is the answer.
I just want to go back to your comments about the lack of resources in housing and how terribly difficult. At social services, we really find that a lot, whether that be people that are struggling with substance use, mental health, and just living in general poverty. And I think as a community, if you're a landlord, if you know landlords that could be more lenient with people that have backgrounds, such as felonies with different chemical use or what they may not pass a background check, it's very hard for people to not have their basic needs met. And there's a lot of data It talks about if you don't have housing and your basic needs met for yourself or your children and family, it is very hard to work on your substance use, mental health, or any other struggles that you're going through. And we find that as the biggest barrier. And you could look at it as data or just subjective data that we have in working day in and day out with people that are really struggling. And so employers, to be able to give people a shot that may have a background, that would be very welcome, along with housing resources, because we do find that to be the biggest barrier overall, all the services that we find. And the amount of money that people live on that may receive some economic assistance benefits from our agency is very little. And I think sometimes there is a stereotype that people that receive some kind of a cash assistance from the county may have a lot, and it's actually very minimal, and probably most of us would not be able to live on that. So I think, again, just about judgments and giving people a shot as a community, I think that's one thing just to throw out there to consider for you or someone that you may know that has rental property or is an employer.
I just want to add one, as somebody who practices in court here in Goodhue County and other counties, I represent kids who are truant. I'm appointed by the court, and I'm also a public defender. And the number one thing I could suggest that people here could do is for truant kids who are just starting with some of these sort of gateway drugs, is volunteer to be a mentor. I cannot tell you how much kids want that. Luckily, Youth Outreach right here in Red Wing has just done a big drive, and they now have a pretty okay pool of mentors, and we're trying to get those kids hooked up with people. So if you know kids who might benefit from that, or if you know people who might be interested in being mentors, please contact Youth Outreach, because the kids just need that so badly. And I can say to them behind closed doors, you know, marijuana is just the start, and they just look at me, and you know, it's easy for me to say that, but you need someone who's walking with them all the way through it. And the other thing is just, I really want to echo what Abby just said. I also represent parents in child protection cases, and housing is a huge issue, and lack of housing. And, you know, it's easy for me to say this, but it seems to me lack of housing is a big trigger. And so if you can find it in your hearts to, you know, accept someone who doesn't have a stellar background check, or convince someone else to do that, please do that. And then I guess finally, if you know someone who's an adult who could use a mentor, help those people. And if they want help, you know, but of course, I think we all can do more than we realize.
Hi, I'm Jesse. I'm the Executive Director of Life Teams. I'm nowhere near the speaker that Tom is, but I just wanted to get up and say we're fully behind this treatment court program. We'd like to help any way possible. Being a former addict myself, I was in Judge Bailey's courtroom many of times and got a second chance. But unfortunately, some of the times that I had a second chance, I got out the door and would start using again because there was no accountability there. I think we need a program that holds the people we're trying to help accountable. Yeah, that's all I got.
Third row back.
Yeah, got it.
Hi, my question's for Abby. We talk a lot about people who are hurting in this environment, you know, that we're trying to help them. But I know that there's a lack of mental health services in this community. Could you speak to that and maybe what we can do to help with that as a community?
Yeah, I think, you know, our community here in Goodhue County and Red Wing has had a lack of resources in the mental health world and substance use. And again, those are related. Specifically with substance use, we have actually had a big increase in the last 2 years with substance use services. And back to your comment in the back about aftercare, Common Ground does have a lot more programming for aftercare. So just a touch on that piece too. So I actually have been really happy to see that change in our community in the last couple years here. Regarding mental health resources, we are constantly working with our mental health providers and have a lot of close contact with them. A few years ago, the mental health center was internal in Goodhue County, and then that was privatized, and that is now Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center. And so we have a lot of crossover with them, and we are constantly advocating for services that we see necessary, and also being grateful for some of the additional services that we do have here. There's a service called ARMS, which is basically like a mental health skills work that goes out into the home, and that really has grown here in Goodhue County in the last couple years. And I am a huge proponent of ARMS services because I think it's getting out into someone's real environment, out of an office, and really helping them tackle some of that stuff. So that is a resource that people may not know about. So Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center provides that service along with Fernbrook Family Services, and you would just need to, someone would need to contact them, and that is a very helpful service. So what you can do, that's a tough question regarding that.
Speaking of those armed services, can anybody access those, or are those income-based?
They are income-based, yes, thank you for bringing that up. So you have to be on medical assistance, so there is some income guidelines with that. So it certainly doesn't reach everyone, but it can reach other people, and I don't know that it's something that people know about. It's a tough thing to answer, what could community members do. I think just being aware of what's out there, supporting what we do have, and being open to more services coming in. And I think mental health affects a lot more people than we realize, and it's not something that can be seen.
So I'm gonna bug you with what I'm gonna say right now. No, mental health is important, but it's not the solution, so to speak. It's like turning to the schools and saying, you know, the teachers are supposed to take care of these kids. You send a busted kid to school, it's not the job of the teachers to take care of this. You got a busted kid. You got a bad home that you have to deal with. You take 10 drug addicts with bipolar disorder and antisocial personal disorder, all these disorders, you get rid of the drugs, and there's only going to be one that really is a mental health issue. The services are important, but that's everyone in the country is clamoring now for more mental health, more mental health. That's not it. It's a piece of the puzzle. And the questions that we've thrown out and everything that you see today, everyone, you know, I always say, how do you unravel a plate of spaghetti? You have to have a bunch of people around looking at different angles, everyone wanting to get dirty and talking about it, but nobody has the one solution. No. And that's why, even as a physician, and you know, my psych unit is full. I can't cram any more addicts and all of this stuff in there, but that's not where they need to be. But where do you put them? In the courts? You can't. Can we house them with mentors and so on? We don't have housing. You know, we don't have mentors and so on. If you got a plate of spaghetti in your community, you got to admit you got a plate of spaghetti. And until the community stands up and says, we got issues in this town, nothing's going to get done. And if you get a group and a coalition, I've spent the last 3 years traveling the United States speaking about this and talking to every level of government about this. The coalition gets you the dollars that you need. You have to wrap in everybody in the community, from faith-based services to businesses to families and so on. And the accountability has to start with the people that you see, the eyes that you stare at every day. If you're not cleaning it up at home, you can't clean it up in the community.
I definitely agree that
I
definitely agree that it's not, by no means is it one solution. I think it's multiple things, and I think the things that we've talked about today kind of summarize those things. And it's not. Our families are complicated, we're complicated, the system's complicated. It's tough, and I think to look at it from multiple different aspects is definitely wise.
Yeah. I mean, I practiced medicine in this town for 12 years. We have great mental health services, but we can't turn only to mental health and say, get us out of this, prescription drug our way out of this, talk our way out of this, and so on. It's part of it. But expanding those resources and dollars isn't going to fix this issue, what we're seeing.
We are hearing a lot of good ideas tonight, and I think it's really important that each of us feel empowered to make a difference. because that gives us hope. It's not an unattainable goal to make progress in this problem. If each of us can take something from this meeting and make a positive difference, that's very empowering. So what I would suggest is, I see we have resources from the newspaper here. That is one possible way to capture some of these great ideas. If we come up with a list, an actionable list that each of us can look at, some days we might be able to do something on that list and make a difference. Can somebody capture these ideas and put them out in the community so all of us can spread the change? Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to add one thing. Paul's moving to our next question, and I just want to add too, that's some of the other numbers were tracked that I didn't bring tonight, were our family complaints, domestics, and a lot of those things that we respond to. And just to put a little, I guess, a face on it, at the Law Enforcement Center, there's a camera out front, and we created 2 internet sales exchange sites. Those sites are also being used for exchanging children. And when you've got people in your community that have had such a bad breakup that they have to exchange the child at the police department's parking lot so that they feel safe making the exchange, that speaks volumes to the people that are hurting and in need out there. So again, what we're saying needs to be taken to heart, and there isn't just one thing. It's a big plate of spaghetti, as Dr. Blee said. So, yes, sir, your question.
I do have a question, but I have something to remind everybody. I want first, my name is Sisi Haba, and I live in Red Wing. We talk about a lot of things. Everybody explained about a lot of things happening in our community. It's true. We talk about crime, drug, alcohol, all stuff. And we talk about financing assistance to be able to help these people have a mental problem. We talk about the kids. The first thing is a family. We have to communicate with our kids. We have to go close to our kids. We need to know with who work with my kids, what family he's coming from or she's coming from. If we know, we will find a way how to kick out our kids from all this trouble. It's easy. Some family, they divorce. So the kids, maybe mom's side or dad's side. But if the divorce happen, communicate with your ex-husband about the kids. If you go to work, say, okay, I'm not going to have time to go pick up the kids. You have time to go get them? Because when they're alone, they have temptation to do all stuff they hear from their friend or they watch from TV or internet. Those flavor is very, very difficult to resolve, but we can. We have to communicate with our kids, our friend. A couple weeks ago, we hear about one kid who was trying to take a gun to go to school, shoot. Okay, everybody wants their kids learn how to shoot. But if you have a gun at home, when you finish teach them, lock it. Do not let them have access to that after you. Because when they have access to that, another idea comes with their head to do something bad. So we have to communicate with our kids. I was in South Carolina. They have some jail, so the correct kid. Your kids don't listen, send them over there. I watched some kids, they went over there. The way they was treating them, they go, oh, I will never do it again. Please, I'm sorry, daddy, mom, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it. And after they come back, they be correct. So if some people, like a couple people was saying, oh, I was in alcohol, I was in drug, I was on probation, and they come out, they went to school, they be graduated. That's a good thing. But before that happens, you have to have a good friend to communicate with them. Or they have some places they call family counselor. If I see someone who don't do right thing, I may find a contact with his family to contact those people, to communicate with them. Because sometimes if you don't listen to your mom or dad, you need to have some friend or someone who you can listen to put you on the track. So we need to communicate with your kids. We need to be friends with your kids. If we do that, we're going to go away with all this stuff. And my question right now, I want first thanks the law enforcement. Some people are scared about police officers. Why we scared about police officers if we are not doing something dirty? If you clear, you will never scare. I was raised by a police officer and the lawyers. So I have to do correct. I'm from West Africa, French Guinea. So when I was leaving, they said, okay, America is two opportunities. Do bad or do good. So accept you. So I know where I come from. So I know I never mistake. So I will do everything correct. If you do correct, you'll be okay. So we have to communicate with our kids. And we need to know with who they're working, with who they're dealing. My kid goes to school. He's supposed to be at home at 3:30. So when he come back 5 o'clock, you need to ask. Don't get afraid because it's my daughter, it's my kid, my baby. No, ask. Tell them where was you, with who, what you was doing. You need to know. If we communicate with our kids, we're gonna go away from a lot of things of this. So I want to know now if Good Hill County has any organization with a parent, then they can exchange ideas how to follow up the kids and to put everybody on the track. So if I think the microphone, that's my opinion, and I want to thank everybody.
That's about 8 o'clock. Who wants to answer that one? If there's a program out there for parents. I would say, can we check with social services, or I guess where could he call?
I mean, we have some programs. I know we're a couple minutes past time. Just to briefly answer the question about resources for parents, we do have a program called Parent Support Outreach Program at Goodhue County Health and Human Services. Fernbrook Family Services also does have resources for families. I'm not up to date on specifically what they're offering at the moment, but those would be probably the best resources outside of seeking your own therapy services to help kind of with parenting struggles and challenges.
Well, I think the time has come, unfortunately, that we have scheduled for this meeting to come to close about 8 o'clock. So, first of all, I just want to reflect on what Ben said earlier, that this is one of the holiest days in Christendom, and I think we all have a responsibility to our own personal faith, or any faith at all, to do the best we can for our neighbors. So thank you for reminding us, Ben, and also the importance that religion plays in this process as bringing people back that were lost, and we all can support that. So some of the takeaway points here. First of all, I do want to thank our sponsors. This came together primarily because of some thoughtful people, including the Republican Eagle, bringing this out into the newspaper and making some points about the necessity of this. We want to thank the Duff Endowment and Carol Duff for being able to actually support this meeting. I want to thank Goodhue County because that's where a lot of the social services and human services are done. And I want to especially I want to thank Steve O'Keefe for being patient with me not introducing him properly. But I also want to thank the City of Red Wing for, number one, making this meeting possible at the library, for people to come together, to read together, to think together, and more importantly, to support each other together. And I do want to thank the other communities in this city and welcome them for the support they've given to Ben and to the people that are in need. And I think all we have to do as citizens and as citizens and human beings is to look next to each other and see what we can do to make this a better world and a better place. So thank you, Chief, and panelists for your humanity. Thank you for the lessons you brought here today and tonight. And thank you for panelists for opening your hearts and your time and your minds and making some important statements. We didn't want this to be in a vacuum. We were tired of watching people on television talk about these programs. We want to actually feel what people are feeling. And as the Chief has brought out, the hurt, the pain, these are the real problems. It's not the problems of fixing those. It's fixing those problems and being better people. So, Chief, I would like you to kind of summarize, but once again, I just want to thank all of the people involved here tonight for showing that it is important we come together, that we think together and we act together. And hopefully that'll bring a drug court which we can make some difference and changes in this community we have. So thank you very kindly.
I think Commissioner Draldis summed it up really good. If I could say anything, I think the biggest thing is just the best gift you can give somebody is your time and listening. You don't necessarily have to give them an answer, but to help solve some of these pains and these personal struggles, we need to truly listen to what people are saying to us. And I'll use an example of one time when I went on a call as an officer, and I was talking to an individual, and it was an elderly woman who was by herself, and she was telling me what was going on in her life, and about an hour later, I pointed out, "Ma'am, that's not a law enforcement problem." I said, "What can I do to help you?" And she just looked at me and said, "Sonny, you've already done it. You've listened." And sometimes that's all people want, is they just want somebody that listens and that cares. So we have some display boards over here. The one pegboard I see is sitting down on the floor now. Those things have all been seized from within the city of Red Wing and within the county on drug arrest. So if you're wondering what some of the things we're seeing out there, I don't think a day goes by we don't take a meth bubble, which is what they call their little pipes, off somebody. And then we also have some other display boards that kind of explain things that are there. And the $900 pipe we took off one person, the 3-foot tall thing on the table there. So it kind of shows you what our community is struggling with, and if you happen to see these things, just don't blow it off as some neat contraption. It is tied to the drugs. So with that, thank you, panel, and we'll stick around for if anybody wants to come up and ask any questions one-on-one. Thank you again.